With that said, then we'll move on to discussion items and COVID-19 transition. I think we're gonna-
Okay, so I'm sure a lot of this will answer some of the questions that parents have brought up tonight. We have another presentation. Mary Ann, can you please go? I think it's 5 of 74. So this is the Board of Education received this as well, parents and community. This is our second plan, a transition plan for in-person learning starting second quarter through fourth quarter for the 2020-2021 school year. Inside this packet, I wrote a brief letter, to the board on why I feel it's going to touch on a couple things I think some of the parents and students said tonight. I think the first thing is, and I'm just going to highlight a few points, so please bear with me. At this time during the pandemic, I don't believe we can return to traditional in-person learning. I define in-person learning as students back on campus with teachers conducting normal classroom activities and traditional interactions taking place. That being said, I do believe there is an opportunity to provide the social emotional interaction that students desperately need right now. Included in this document is a draft plan on how students can get back on campus safely and begin to have some social interaction that is essential to their development and well-being. Students would continue to learn on virtual platforms and would have an option to attend on their assigned day or stay remote. And the reason I want to highlight this first is to the board, this plan that I'm going to discuss tonight and for the group in attendance and watching on TV, I want to make very clear, we're a while away before I can have kids come back on campus and do labs and do hands-on experiences, and teachers can move around and work with them in small groups. Just because of social distancing, where our staff comfort level, all these, there's a lot of moving variables. But that being said, I do think we're at a place, and I'm going to present some rationale tonight of why I think we can at least have students starting to come back on campus second quarter, and we monitor that progress for a while and then see if we could add a second day. It all depends on how this will go, but I do think there is an opportunity for students to get back on campus. Since the start of the school year, many factors have changed, which I'm going to cover in this packet, and I think it makes bringing students back on campus feasible and practical. Parents and students are requesting these opportunities due to concerns about students' mental health and academic challenges. And as a district, I think it's imperative we come together to ensure all students have access to the social emotional interactions that are critical, as well as the overall development and well-being for our students. If you go, Mary Ann, to the next page, which I believe is the rationale. So there have been some things that have occurred, and I'm going to use both of these. Excuse me. Okay, number one, I'm going to cover, Kristen Smetana, the Assistant Superintendent, is going to cover tonight, but the IDPHCs and the Cook County Department of Public Health have developed a school matrices. And so there's 6 data points that we're now tracking on a weekly basis. We didn't have that back in August. So one of the concerns that came up with staff and some community members was, well, how do we know if it's safe, not safe? So we now have a school matrices with readily available data that every week is updated to tell us whether or not it's safe to be back on campus or if cases are trending in the wrong direction. We've had over 400 students on campus first quarter. Some of our special ed classes have been meeting on campus. We've had athletics, activities, driver's ed, outside groups. So we've had students on campus already this first quarter. We've completed and experienced contact tracing. I'm sure people have seen in the landmark. We have experienced a case or two, both on the staff side and on the student side, where we've had to go through contact tracing. We had to quarantine students, so we have experience doing that, as well as working with the Cook County Health Department and their epidemiologists. We've implemented and established protocols in regards to improving the safety and overall airflow in the environment, whether it's extra cleaning staff, deep cleanings, increased airflow, temperature checks, and we have a quarantine room, PPE for the health office staff, one-way stairwells. So we've taken a lot of necessary precautions that would allow us to help get students back in the building. Let's see. We have a lot of local high schools that have also anticipated or announced their return. We had some of them start this week. We have obviously the private schools like Fenwick and Nazareth. Lincoln Way and Lockport started yesterday. September 28th, Lamont, Carl Sandburg, Andrew, Stagg are scheduled to go back in person with a similar model that I'm going to discuss tonight. Lyons Township announced that they're looking to start the first day of second quarter. Evergreen Parks announced October 5th. York High School has talked about October 8th. So I think there's a lot of schools. One of the things that came up back in August is that we were one of the last schools trying to still open, and there were no other high schools doing it with the IDPH guidelines and all the concerns. So I think some things have changed and have improved to where I think, like one of the comments tonight is I think we're in a little better place than maybe where we were in August. And we still have a few weeks to get our bearings even under us more before the first day of second quarter. So what I'd like to go over next is that we still have some open-ended concerns. And Mary Ann, if you could scroll down. I know that's hard for the people in the audience to see, so I'm reading. I don't like to read to people. I know you can all read, so I'm just trying to cover them the best I can. We still will have to address some staffing issues. I think we will see an increase in some leave requests. We still have staff at an uncomfortable level. You'll see later in the survey that we have staff survey data that shows that they're not comfortable returning yet. We're scheduled to fill our nurse vacancy by the October 13th board meeting. We still have to be cognizant of the weather is changing, so that will decrease the opportunity to go outdoors. Cold and flu season will be upon us, so we have to take that into consideration. We're still working through some things with performance-based classes like wellness, choir, music. And then flexibility with the schedule. I've heard parents say they appreciate seeing their students seeing their teachers every day. So one of the plans one of the components of the plan we'll present tonight will touch on that, keeping the similar remote schedule we have now, but allowing students to come on campus one day a week. We do have to continue to improve our communication with families and make everybody understand that wearing your mask, practicing social distancing, the 3 W's, wash your hands, wear your mask, watch your distance. We still have to pound that home to all of our communities and families that it's going to take a group effort to get this done. But again, I do think that we should be able to come back on campus in some form second quarter. That being said, I think we have to understand tonight, Ms. Smetana is going to cover the matrices part, but that being said, if we have 2 weeks where there's an uptick in cases and we slide to that substantial side, we have to be prepared to flip to remote for 2 weeks, allow the case numbers to go back down in the area, and then we would be able to try to transition again back. So we have to understand as parents and people watching tonight, this is going to be a fluid situation. It's the same talking point I gave back in August, that we have to be fluid as things are thrown at us. We need to adjust, and if we need to adapt, we will. Okay, I think those are most of the things. Kristen, if you want to address the matrices, if we could put those up there. That's the survey data, Mary, that we should be able to continue to scroll past that. If you want to touch on the survey data, I took the 2 primary questions that I know came up over citizen comments and through the board and through comments from staff over the last couple months. So I made sure that Dr. Freitas had these in his survey, and that is just what is the preference for instruction second quarter. We had, after we weeded through any double responses, we had 898 families respond. 71.1% wanted to transition to some combination of in-person or remote learning. 28.9% want to continue with remote, just remote learning.
Yeah, can you put that on the screen if you're going to show?
Are we doing the survey or the matrix?
We're going to the survey.
Okay, Mary Ann, could you put up the survey, please? Thank you.
It's the next page in the report. I'm sorry, Mary Ann. And then the other report was, the other question under the family side was if the district continues with the current model, which would be via Zoom or Google Meets, but provide students an option to participate in the classroom or continue to attend remotely, how likely would your student proceed? 75.5% said attend on their assigned days, 24.5% said attend remotely.
Mary Ann, could you go up a little?
Yeah, that's still not the right slide.
To students?
You got to go down, Mary Ann, to students.
No.
Other way, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, now for students, we had 758 students respond. Their preference is 70.7 to transition to some form of in-person learning, 29.3 continue with remote learning. And then with the question about if we were allowed to, if we stayed on the virtual instruction but you were assigned days, and that was a clean split of 75-25. And then on the last page of survey data, we still have staff that is the opposite, on the opposite side, with their comfort level. The staff preference was, out of 89 staff members that filled out the survey, 76.4% wanted to continue with remote learning, 23.6% wanted to transition to some combination of in-person or remote. And in regards to their comfort level, and this is one of the challenges that I'm still working through with the staff, is this: how comfortable would you feel if the district transitioned to a model that included both in-person and remote learning following the school matrices published by the IDPH and Cook County Department of Public Health? 56% said not comfortable, 25.8% said somewhat uncomfortable, and then we have roughly about 18% that said between comfortable and very comfortable. So we still have some work to do getting our staff to a level where they feel comfortable with students being back on campus. So I wanted to touch on the other spreadsheet that was in the presentation tonight was just a list of all the activities and things that are on campus and how many students are participating. I already touched on that briefly, and then Kristen will cover the school matrices, which are in the report. And that's the, Mary Ann, that's the page 12 of 74, which should be the green, yellow, and red. Down, I think.
Keep going, one more page. Right there.
There you go.
So this is the matrix that is published by Illinois Department of Public Health in conjunction with Cook County Department of Public Health. It's very similar to the one that DuPage Cook County of Public Health has adopted as well. We have chosen to add a metric, which I will discuss in a minute. All of the data can be found by clicking that link. It says click here and selecting the school matrix. So I wanted to take a minute, if you go to the next page, Mary Ann, to show you what that looks like. So this is the data that I pulled today from the Cook County Public Health Department. And this is a tool that did not exist in August. Schools did not have the ability to go to one website and get all of these matrix and all of these data, in particular to their area, in order to make decisions. And this now exists. So I'll come back to this and we'll walk through exactly kind of where we're at right now. So it probably makes sense, Marianne, to live in the other document. So as you can see, there are 3 transmission levels. There's a minimal transmission level, a moderate, and a substantial. And as you go through, you can go through across and see where you fall each week. RB has chosen to use suburban Cook County as a whole when reviewing the data. And so in doing so, if you were to go back to that other website, you would see that currently we are in a blue level, which means that we have very stable metrics, and that in the last 4 weeks, we have been, suburban Cook County has been orange once. So that would put us in the moderate transmission for that section, or that data point. Weekly suburban Cook County case rates in between 50 to 100 per 100,000. And if you go back to that other page, you'll see this week we're currently at 78. So that again would put us in the moderate transmission category. The next data point is something that we have decided to add. In addition to looking at the metrics provided by IDPH and Cook County, we've also decided that it's important for us to look at weekly case rates for our local area, which we've defined as Riverside, North Riverside, and Brookfield, since those are our 3 biggest feeding towns. To do that, we look at a slightly different website. So Marion, if you go down 2 pages, we go to the Northwestern schools. They have put together a database. And why we use this one instead, they're using the data from the Illinois Department of Public Health, but this website allows you to combine multiple zip codes and to get one overall metric. So it does the work for you. So as you can see today, I pulled the information for zip code 60513, which is Brookfield, and 60546, which is Riverside and North Riverside. You can see the rolling average positivity rate is 2.73 for the last 7 days. The number that we look at is right below that. So the weekly new cases per 100,000 is 73. So going back up to that metric, that would again also put us in the moderate transmission category. The next data point is looking at overall case number increases for 2 consecutive weeks. Currently, we are in the minimal transmission area based off the data that I pulled today, which is on the next page. Looking at weekly youth case numbers and whether or not that's increasing. Again, currently that puts us at the minimal transmission. And then the weekly test positivity for suburban Cook County, we are currently at 6%, so that would put us in the moderate transmission. And so this is something that we would look at on a regular basis. But also I think it's important to note that the Cook County Department of Public Health has also made it clear that a change in a county risk level designation does not mean that it would automatically impact schools in that area. So for example, if we were in moderate and we had the county as a whole moved to substantial transmission, that does not necessarily impact RB. That could be due to a nursing home, that could be due to several other components. And so Cook County Department of Public Health has specifically said that. And so what we would do before we ever moved any transmission level is consult with the epidemiologist at Cook County Department of Public Health. This is also something that didn't exist before August. If it did, schools didn't have a contact. And so now I have a contact to an epidemiologist at Cook County Department of Public Health. I've spoken to her several times. She's incredibly responsive. I usually get a response within an hour. And so we would consult with her before we ever decided to move in this continuum one way or another, whether it be positive or negative. We would consult with her to see exactly what are the reasons for the data points and whether or not it was appropriate to be moving levels. So I think those all of this is information that again didn't exist when we started school in August, and it's something that we would be using to drive our decision as to what instructional model or what % of student enrollment we would be able to have in the building.
So if we take, thank you, Kristen, for that data, and again, it's readily available, and it's updated on the Cook County Department of Public Health site once a week, every Wednesday. So we'll establish a folder on our COVID-19 page so that it will have each week's report, so community members, whoever wanted to check our website, can see that printout. We're working on establishing that with our webmaster. So the last thing I'd like to bring to your attention is last page, Marianne, of the presentation. And the board members have this on their Chromebook. So it's very small for the community to see. So the red pillar or column is remote learning. We're in that right now, but the only time we would shift back to that is if we got to a substantial. And that's what it says on the bottom about substantial. Anytime after first quarter, we would go back to remote learning if we got to that substantial category where we had 2 of the last 4 weeks were in orange, and there were some other factors in our area, the local area, that would be driving us to that decision. The 2 middle columns, which are in yellow, which are kind of like the moderate / minimal, those would be kind of where we should see ourselves living hopefully for the second quarter and sometime into the third quarter. But you can see there's 2 things there. It says in-person at 25% and then in-person at 50%. The original plan that we have to still work through this. I've reconvened the learning subcommittee that includes instructional coaches, teachers, administrators. We have 1 board member on there. We have some union leadership members on there. So we're trying to work through what that actual model or plan would look like. But the idea would be that we would start slow by having 25% of the students back on campus. So how would that look? Teachers would continue to teach their virtual instruction on Zoom or Google Meets, but we would come up with an alpha slice breakdown so that students would at least have 1 day a week where they can come and go through their 7 classes on campus. Now, they would still be participating via the Zoom or via the Google Meets. Now, that might be either watching it on the projector in the teacher's room or actually participating through the Chromebook and headphones, but it would allow students to get back into that routine of getting up, coming to school, seeing some of their classmates, seeing their teachers, seeing a lesson be taught in person. Yes, that teacher would still be teaching it via the virtual platform, but it would provide students some of that interaction that they desperately need. Teachers would be on campus unless they go through the formal accommodation process with the district office. Lunches would be delivered or pick up, kind of like a grab and go. This is where the board needs to allow the administration some flexibility to work with the teaching staff and this subcommittee so that we can come up with a schedule. I'm not sure at this point if it's better to go through the full 7 periods and have those 25% of students eat lunch on campus, or if it's better to go to where, if you see the second yellow comment, it talks about eventually getting to 50% of student enrollment, but still doing the virtual instruction. I know this much, once we get to 50%, until the guidelines change and some things change from the IDPH, we will not be able to provide lunches on campus. So the instructional day, we would have to go to 35-minute classes, do all 7 classes. Students would go from like 8 to 12:35 and then go home for lunch. And then there would be an opportunity for some virtual office hours, maybe in the afternoon, and some additional planning time for staff. So what I'm still working through with the committee is what's the best model to bring back this 25%. And so that's kind of where we're living right now. I don't see us getting to the green side, which would be 100% of students on campus for a half day, until we've lived in that minimal transition level for several weeks, and there was some revised ISBE guidance, as well as at least some generation of a vaccine, the release of a vaccine. And then the second in person all the way to the right, which is in green, would be 100% of students on campus in a traditional schedule. I don't know if we'll get there this year. Again, this is a very fluid situation, but this kind of lays out how we can start slowly with 25% and follow the matrices and see how things are going with students on campus, and then work our way towards 50%. And if things are going well, live in that 50% for a while, and then slowly, increase that should there be some changes from the IDPH and the ISBE guidance. So there is a plan that we're working on. I know the board's been, was adamant last meeting about having, surveying the community, surveying the students, the teachers, so that occurred. We've shared some of that data. Dr. Freitas can speak to that a little bit during his principal's report as well. I know there's one other thing that has come up in regards to winter sports. At this point in time, we have not started contact days for winter sports for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to get through our fall season, and we're taking it 1 month at a time to see how things go with our fall season. Also, the fall season is, with the exception of swimming, are all outdoor activities, where the winter sports are all indoor activities. Now, with the exception of, I think, boys swimming and diving, everything else in the winter is medium to high risk. So the only way that we'll be able to do winter sport competitions is if the IHSA or the IDPH allows that under their current guidelines of low, medium, and high risk sports and activities. I know a lot of parents have asked about that. The administration has not provided any recommendation to the board, and the board has not made any decision at this time on whether or not we would be running winter sports or canceling winter sports. So I want to, if there is that rumor out there, I want to make sure people understand. We've told our coaches we'll update them October 1st, and we'll do it again November 1st. I think the official start date of the winter season is November 16th. I will say this, I think I heard a parent mention this earlier. We can't put the cart before the horse. I understand social, emotional, and I understand kids are looking for some line of engagement, some type of hook back to the school and seeing their classmates. And I understand the athletics and activities are serving as that venue right now while we're doing this remote learning. But our focus as a board and administration and as a community should be figuring out first how to get kids back on campus to start engaging in some learning activities. Once that starts going successfully, we should then be then we could worry about the winter sports. But I do think our focus at this time, if we have to work through some things with our staff or work through some things with community members to get everybody on board with this plan, or at least accepting that we're moving forward with this plan, I think that should be our priority before we would worry about athletics. But we are not in any position at this time where a recommendation has been made to cancel any sports or hold out on any sports until people are back in person. Right now, we're trying to figure out how to get students back, and it basically resembles what the parents and the students who spoke tonight, like figuring out some way to start getting kids back on campus at least one day a week. So that was kind of a quick snapshot. I'm sorry if I was rushing through a little bit. There was a lot of information to cover, but I feel like it's almost like Groundhog Day. We lived through this in August again. We've made some modifications. We're relying more on some specific data that the IDPH and the Cook County Department of Public Health have put out. And again, like I stated, we have some students on campus. We have over 400 students participating in different activities and athletics, so they are spending some time on campus. So I do think we're in a better place than where we were in August. I'll open that to questions.
I think the community came to tell us what they think. The survey data speaks for itself. Dr. Spintana's data matrix tells us it's safe. So I would expect us to be in an in-person learning at some form or fashion at the second quarter, which is October 18th.
19th, I think. I'm sorry.
October 19th.
I am strongly in favor of getting the kids back into school. I think they've suffered long enough between last year, so far this year, and we need to do something for them. As a community, we need to compromise. Not everyone's going to be happy. We understand that. We don't intend on making people angry or bitter, but we look at the majority of the responses that we've received, and it's all been get the kids back. And let's do it.
When I'm hearing this model, it's still, there's a couple things that are bothering me. This is our board discussion. This is one, it was a great presentation, but now it's time for us to discuss this. Again, the grocery store is not open one day a week. You're not getting your UPS, Amazon packages one day a week. You're not going to the restaurant one day a week. 7 days a week. Our kids our young people are working in restaurants, and they're not working one day a week. And here we are talking about school one day a week. Our elementary school kids are not going to school one day a week. The plan is being driven by faculty who have shown they are uncomfortable coming back. Now, I don't know if the same faculty don't go to the grocery store and they get everything delivered, and they don't use any fast food. I don't know that. But I do know this community is out and about. All I got to do is stand on the street in the middle of the day. They're out and about. All the restaurants are full, the grocery stores are full, the parks are full, people are out and about. And so I think we've regressed in this model. I understand we got to come back slowly, but I think we regressed on the model, the hybrid model we approved. And I think we need to push it a little more. I'm not happy with this 1 day a week, 35 minutes, rush to your classes. I don't think that's adequate. I think that day would be a waste.
I just really wanted, I am also in favor of bringing the students back. I want to thank everyone who filled out that survey. I spent almost 3 hours yesterday reading through all of the survey comments. I want the students to know who filled out, I think there were 7 pages of student comments, that I read every one of them. A lot of them were really heartbreaking. That if you're a student and you're hating school and you're having issues, difficulties, I just want them to know that we read them, we heard them, and that I do encourage students and parents, if you think something is up with your child, we have lots of social workers and counselors here at RB. Please reach out to the school, because we do ultimately want to make sure that all of our kids are okay. I am, though, in favor of bringing kids back. I think that it's time.
I'd like to share, my daughter is in a liberal arts college, small liberal arts college in Iowa. The college made the decision to bring the students back. The students had a buy-in. They are now 4 weeks into their school year. They've had 16 cases. They have a nice robust model. If you think you're exposed, they have a couple townhouses set up. Students self-report. They got tracing, contact tracing. Students are told weekly by the dean that you have to buy this, you have to buy into this, you have to own it. Our goal is to see you walk for those who are graduating. Those students who have lab classes, they alternate. They have half the students in lab one day, then the virtual lab. My daughter, who's a nursing student, says it's fantastic, getting a lot of attention in the lab on deck. The deans have told them, pick your tribe, stay with your 8 people, eat with them, talk with them, socialize with them. That's who you visit, that's who you hang with. And they are buying it. They're buying it so well. The people in the community has supported the college. They threw the kids a coffee crawl on a Saturday morning, just to really encourage them to keep it up. And we have to live with this virus. For all of us who are working daily and have been working since day one as an essential worker, we wear the protective gear, but we are out there every day working with this. And our students are saying they're ready. In fact, our students are working with it. They're in our restaurants and our grocery stores. Our students are taking the risk our own staff are not taking. We gotta do better. That's my biased opinion.
So I think it's important to also mention the faculty and the teaching staff, some of which I now experience through, more by happenstance, but I think you can all relate from what we see in our homes. We have incredible teachers here at RB, and from everything I've seen, they've done an incredible job. And so I think we have to be just mindful that as we talk about the issue and we look at the survey, and the numbers are so disparate, right? We're really far apart. But the story is pretty clear. I just think as a starting statement, I would like to just make clear that we appreciate what the teachers are doing. From what I see, they're incredibly innovative, positive, enthusiastic. They're doing what they can, and we appreciate that. We also, as Gina was saying, we see the comments from the students. We also have heard many comments from the teachers, and of course they're legitimate. This is about health and safety, and we hear those. And I can't speak for my board colleagues, but I know from all of our discussions, we have always been very open about saying, within the limits of what's possible in the law and existing contracts and so forth. But of course, we are open to listening to that and trying to accommodate to the extent possible. Now, having said all of this, I actually really appreciate Laura's comments in that, when we have to, and now that the data is so accurate, I think it's really remarkable how when you just look at what's happened over these 6 months from, what's going on, we just have to pull back, to now the fine-grained nature of the data, which allows us to react with a similar level of refinement. The pulling back is never a question. You can always, from one day to the next, you can say, we're going to go back. I agree with Laura that why can't we do a similar approach on the other side? So when I see the 25% model, maybe that's for a week, maybe for 2, because I can see that there might be reasons to ramp up and test, and how do people get in this? That's totally legitimate in my mind. But I think the point that we had a hybrid model, It was based on 50%. And sort of now to sort of weigh, I mean, I agree with that point. I think we should have the courage to move faster to getting students on campus. And we all know we can always come back very quickly, but we shouldn't be shy about doing it the other direction as well.
I'll let you close. So a couple of comments on the survey itself. I was really pleased to see the high level of participation from all three groups. I know there was a flurry of prods to get those done, and I think when you see so many comments from families and students and staff, we're all equally engaged in this decision. There is not a black and white answer here. There's a lot of compromise that we're talking about, whether it's 25% or more. And I think it shows that in this whole crisis, it's all about the grace we give each other, right? And so I think a lot of what we're seeing in those comments from the students, the faculty, and the community are about their individual concerns, and they're very real, and they're very legitimate. Excuse me. I do think that one of the things that shone through for me was the real positive comments on the enthusiasm for the teachers, and then the communication from the administration. I think there's a clear improvement in terms of how people are getting information, how they're understanding this is a situation in flux. I think that's really come through strongly. And I think one of the things I would like to know is, if we're compromising on this side, we're looking at different options, can we drill down further on the staff level? What are they really looking for? Are there certain things that we can do for the staff to help make them more comfortable? I heard some comments about dual monitors. I know there's some discussion about Zoom upgrades. There's those kind of technological, fairly modest dollar investments, and we should be looking at those. But what else, right? Besides FMLA and ADA and sick time and those contractual HR options, what else can we be doing? So I'd like to hear some more on that front too.
Okay, and that's what the committee is working on, and I did send a separate email to the union to ask for some information so I could find a way to work it into the plan or model. And so that's why, Laura, I know you talked about the 35 minutes. Our current classes are 40. The teachers and students have all mentioned they appreciate seeing their teachers every day. When you take out the lunch and 10-minute passing periods and go down to 5-minute passing periods and 5 minutes off of each course, we can pull that off and have an easy transition at whatever point that is to go from 25 to 50. If we have to go back, we can't. So you don't want to have a different schedule for each model because that creates confusion and chaos. And so the big piece where the highest risk is students taking their mask off for lunches. And so we really have about a 4.5-hour window from 8 to 12:35 because after 5 hours I have to provide employees a lunch. And I think asking students to go longer than 5 hours with no lunch is also a problem. So we really have about that 4.5-hour window, which is why I have to have some flexibility from the board to modify the schedule to make this all work. Sorry.
Well, the comment there, Kevin, because it's only 1 day a week, there'll be time lost in the novelty. But if they were doing that every day, the 35 minutes would be sufficient.
Well, so just so to make clear that the model, so that so everybody understands, maybe I didn't touch on this, I apologize if maybe I was going too quick. While the 25% and at whatever point we get back to 50%, the other 50% are at home watching that exact same lesson that a teacher is teaching virtually. So those families and students, that 30% that don't feel comfortable coming back, we don't have the two models of the Apex and the in-person, and it's everybody living in the same model. So really, whether you're at home and the reason why I like this model, parents, if your kid's feeling a symptom and we come back second quarter, stay home because you're not missing anything. Because you're getting the same lesson that if you were sitting in that class, you're getting the same lesson being at home on the Zoom. And so we don't have parents like, oh, this is your only 1 day to see your teachers. Don't tell anybody you've got a sore throat or you got to, we can't afford that right now. So by setting it up this way, parents don't feel or students don't feel like, if you're not feeling well or you're experiencing symptoms, it's safer to stay home because you're not going to miss anything. Attendance is still going to be taken virtually, not in person. So I think there's some things that we've learned since August that will make this easier for everybody to adjust and start to get a level of some comfort level to being in person and having people on campus.
So my thought is, if we kept with if we're doing the remote, and we have 25% of the kids come in to the school 1 day a week, we would keep that same schedule. Can they just go off campus for lunch? I mean, these are all
So,
14, 15, I mean, my kids are going all playing basketball at lunch.
right, so that opens up a whole nother level for that 25% of going off campus of some liability insurance things that we would need to take into consideration, right? So if you open up the campus and 4 15-year-olds get in there with their alpha slice and then someone gets in an accident because we had an open campus lunch, is some liability with those things that we'd have to run through our attorneys. The second thing is if we're talking about monitoring this 25% to a point to where then we go to the 50, we're not going to be able to have 50% on campus for lunch. Even if we open up that campus, right?
No, but to your point of keeping the schedule the same, you would keep the schedule the same as it is today for the 25%, and then on the 50%, we go back to our original thought of what we had discussed in August.
The August plan is, at this point, I would say, unless the teachers and stuff come out back to us, I think we have moved to a point to where we feel the 7-period-a-day schedule is better than the August plan because teachers are able to see their kids and kids are able to see their teachers every day of the week, where in August it was every other day. So I think we've gotten some positive feedback from teachers and students that they appreciate seeing their teacher every day of the week. The other piece of that August model was there was still some of those concerns of teachers having to teach to the block. The third piece of that is, and at any time we have a spike and we have to go back to remote, again, we're trying to keep consistent. So if it's following the same schedule that everybody's on remote learning on Mondays, and then when we're in person 50%, it's a similar thing, but some are at home and some are in person. And then in 2 weeks, we have an uptick in cases, we have to go back to remote, we would shift back to the remote plan. It's trying to keep one consistent schedule for all those different transitions.
So the reason why then it's 25% is because they're going to run through, so we're really only having 4 days of students in the building.
4 days of students in the building. Mondays would still be all remote, 40-minute classes currently like we're doing now. What a lot of schools are doing is the Wednesday is off. So they have kids on campus Monday and Tuesday, no one on campus, remote learning on Wednesday to deep clean the building, and then kids come back on Thursday and Friday. That's what like a lot of the private schools are doing, where they have kids full day on campus. They go for 2 days, they're off for 1 day, everybody's remote, and then they go for 2 days.
And then 50% would be 2 days.
Right,
2 days, and you run through your 7 classes, you take your lunch and go home.
correct.
I mean, in my biased opinion, we got to get to that 50%. Maybe we take a week to run through the 25, and then we got, 2 days, you're talking 2 half days. Another question I have, and this wasn't on the screen here, and it was in the survey results that you sent us. I'm concerned with the virtual hours. According to the survey results that we got from the packet, 40%, only 40% of students are saying yes, the teachers are being responsive during virtual office hours.
No, I think you're reading that wrong. I think
Well, it's blue. Blue is yes, 40.5. Are teachers being responsive during virtual office hours?
yes, the 57.9 says NA means they haven't taken advantage of office hours. So that one little red piece, which was less than 1%, I thought, was kids saying no, the teachers weren't being responsive.
So that bothers me because that means the whole afternoon. So then our students, similar to what was happening between March through May, our students are just checking out. They're not taking advantage of it. And we had talked about teachers, if the students are not coming in for virtual office hours, that the teachers may reach out or try to get a group or a discussion. So what's happening is, as soon as virtual learning is over, they're done.
Well, I think, I can't speak to what a parent or what a student's or what, but I know that we have had some teachers do work groups and makeup groups and some things during virtual office hours. I can't force students to take it there, but the teachers are staying on campus to use it. So if kids aren't logging in, or if teachers aren't being responsive, we haven't fielded a lot of complaints or concerns that teachers aren't available, whether or not students are just checking out at, and that's a long day for students. If you think about it being on the computer from 8 to 2:30, the last thing they want to do is maybe another half hour unless they really need it or they're being forced by a teacher because they got to make something up. So I can't force kids to take advantage of the office hours. If we went to the reduced schedule of the half days, I was going to increase those office hours from a half hour to an hour, so that if a teacher needed to give a makeup quiz, a test, or run a small group for kids that are struggling, there's time for intervention. So in one of the, as we're working through some feedback from the staff, instead of just calling it virtual office hours, it could also be virtual intervention as well. Again, we're still in the early phases. We've had one meeting where we've discussed this, and a majority of that meeting was kind of just trying to figure out, what the staff is looking for in order to get behind the plan.
I would say on the office hours, some of the comments were very interesting on that front as well. I think there was the 50% of the students who are using it are really valuing the additional feedback, and for whatever reason, the other 50% are not. I mean, I can only speak for my 3, and they have not. So, but it's good to have that opportunity there. It seems like it's a very good option when you're not doing your homework or you're not walking the dog to use the office hours. Maybe we need to encourage that and make sure people are aware that it's an opportunity.
And I just quickly wanted to add, the staff, has been available. If you saw some of the comments, they're very positive, that they're responsive. You just have those learners that are advanced learners that don't need it, and then you have those students that do need the extra support. But the staff have been present, and they have been very supportive, Mike?
Yeah, I would say that many students, like me, for example, I would maybe go on virtual office hours on a Wednesday, and then the other 2 days, I'm just spending my time doing homework on my own. I don't need it every day, but when I do need it, I use it. And some students don't need it at all. Like, even when we do have school, they don't come in after school for help because they don't need it. So I don't think that I think it's really beneficial, and I think we should keep it.
Michael, Lily, before Ms. Towner gives her, she hasn't had an opportunity to speak, but if we go around the table, I mean, you haven't had an opportunity. What are your thoughts on what you've heard tonight so far, from a student's perspective?
Okay, well, I definitely think we need to get students back in school. I've been a supporter for this from the start. Michael has too. Most of the student body has. You can tell from the survey and all the students who spoke tonight. Good job, guys. And it's really important. Screen fatigue is a huge thing happening. We are on Zoom for way too long every single day. And I am a student who does need additional help a lot, but I find it that sometimes I don't want to go to the office hours just because it is too much just for everything to be online. And like, I am in a sport right now, and I know that everyone else who's in a sport, there's boys and girls cross country, boys and girls golf, girls swimming, and girls tennis running right now. I know that's just a really great outlet for the students that's allowing them to meet with their friends and have some time away from the screens. But the students who aren't in sports right now are being deprived of that, and they're just stuck in their houses doing hours of homework that is online after they are on their Zooms for the whole school day. So we really just need to make an effort to get students into the building. A lot of surrounding schools are getting their students back to school, and I think RB should too. But it's clear there's a huge disconnect between the student body and the Riverside Brookfield community and the teachers, which really pains me because I have never met an RB teacher I haven't loved. I think that the teaching staff here is amazing, but I really think they need to come around because, I mean, they were very hesitant back in August, and they are still not giving up. They are very persistent in not wanting to bring students back to campus, but I really think they need to see that everyone around them just really values in-person education, and it is a top priority.
I also wanted to say that the staff numbers, I think, for survey-wise, should still be higher, because I know many of my teachers still would rather be teaching in class. Student numbers, I also like that went up, and Dr. Freitas sent many reminds, so that has nothing to do with Dr. Freitas sending out communication. That's just students not choosing not to reply. Also, I would like to commend the social workers and counselors, because I've been getting an email every week saying, if you need any help, let us know. So I think they've been doing a good job. And even teachers, I think like 3 of my teachers have been doing weekly surveys to see how we're doing. So I think that most of the staff is really keeping our social and emotional health in mind.
That's good to hear, Michael. Thank you, because I think sometimes that gets overshadowed with all of our other discussions. So thank you for bringing that up.
Kristen, if we could go back to the matrices for just a second. You said that, and I don't know, I wasn't registering it or whatever. You said one is updated once a week, but then one is updated daily, or someone is updated on a Wednesday, or what was that? I'm
The
sorry.
Cook County Department of Public Health, which is where 6 of the primary matrices that we will be using, is updated every Wednesday.
Okay.
So the data is collected Friday through Sunday, and then they update the actual stats on Wednesday.
Okay. But we can check numbers daily somewhere, yes? No?
You can check the local area, I think, from the Northwestern, but I thought that was a 7-day. They have over the last week, the number of tests and cases and positivity rate. But yes, you can check on the Northwestern site the zip codes daily
Okay,
for the local area.
right, okay. So we have,
But the Cook County matrices wants you to use a larger area because, just like everybody has stated tonight, it's not just like people from North Riverside stay in North Riverside.
right,
And so that's why it talks about the surrounding area. So using a much larger area so you can keep track of the positivity rate, cases per week, et cetera.
sure. And I mean, we are surrounded by data all the time, right? Like we have our watches, we have our phones, we have, and again, thank you to everyone that's here and not here at home that filled out the survey, right? Because before the weekend, we only had a few hundred responses, and maybe thinking that we weren't having a good cross-section of the community participate. But I think that we can now surmise that we've heard the community loud and clear about what they want, and this board is committed to, and I think we've said that all along, right? To finding some sort of in-person solution to get things going again. As literally the card-carrying member of the IEA on this board, I've struggled a lot this weekend with what I've read, what I've heard, what's happened, and I just really want to encourage my fellow association members to come to the table, be part of solving the problem, not problem. Please come to the table with good ideas. More heads are better than one. We are committed to having an in-person model, and we want your input. But if you're going to dig in and not give it, then we're going to move forward with a plan. So please come with some ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just, what Deanna said, because I attended that committee meeting, and that was one of the questions I asked, is I think it would be really helpful for the board for us to just get more information on what would make the staff feel more comfortable. So I think that that is a missing piece of information that is critical, that we need to have. So I would just encourage you to try to get that information, because I think that that will help us move forward. And then the other question I have is, even if we do have 25, 50%, whatever the percentage, I'm sure that there's going to be families who still may say, because of a health circumstance or whatever, who still may say, no matter what you do, I'm going to keep my child home for remote, for the following reasons. I think we need to get those numbers. If it's 20%, if it's 30%, if it's 5%, because then that's going to affect how you guys are going to be able to run lunch, like if lunch is, an option. But I think we do have to get a firm answer from parents, because I think that there may be some out there that are like, no, due to a health concern or whatnot.
Well, yeah, and I think
We
that
need
would be
that
the
information.
third, in the next 2 weeks, that will be the third survey that Dr. Freda sends out. We'll
Okay.
have that question, like 4 more of a hard commitment. But I would we're anticipating will be between 25 and 30%. Because, it was 25 for attend on your assigned days, and it was closer to 30% for stay remote, not do a combination.
And what were the numbers back when it was Apex? That was still 20%. So it's
fairly consistent.
fairly consistent, yeah.
So I think we would like the board, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Ed, on the next board meeting, October 13th, we'll have a plan for an in-person learning for 25% starting October 19th, that Tuesday, with a projected to move to a 50%, in a couple weeks by November 3rd. I think that's something we would want to look at.
Yeah, again, I think we can set that goal to get to the 50, but we have to continue to follow the matrices. So if the data is moving in the wrong direction, I don't want to jump us to 50 so that in a week later we're back to remote. I think we need to manage this 1 week at a time and watch the data, which we have something to manage or watch.
Let's talk about on 13th what that matrix looks like, right? Because I think that'll give you time to put it together with the professionals, and you guys are the one to tell us how to do this, but
I think what I'm trying to...
Community's saying, this is the way we want to teach our children, and I understand the union's point, but, and we love and respect our teachers, but we love and respect our children more. This is what...
I think as a
we're in
board,
charge of
right.
educating our children.
I think as a board, we owe it to the community to say, this is what we want, assuming no spike, no anomaly in the science or the data. And I think, it's being driven already by a staff that has said they've dug their heels in and said, we're not comfortable coming. And everything's being driven there. And we've been begging since July, tell us what you want, and you have all the protective gear that nobody else gets in Osco, Jewel, anywhere else. We're going to help you try to make this transition. We have students begging to come in here. And I think as a board, this is our meeting. This is where we as a board say, we need to see this happen, and we need to ask administration, you got to make this happen. I don't know if we need to start hiring out or looking, what are the cases? Do we need to start looking at legal? What do we need to do to start moving in that direction? As a board, are we going to say, this is where we want to go? Because this is what the community is asking us to
What
do.
we just said, this is
As
where
we,
we want
right,
to go.
as we sit here right now.
Yeah.
Right, in this situation.
Right.
We represent the voice of the community.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We, sans the fiduciary responsibilities that we have, but in this situation,
Right.
we represent the community. They have overwhelmingly filled out the
Yes.
survey, yes.
Yep.
And so have the students, and they have overwhelmingly told us what they want, and now it is absolutely our job to carry that out.
So we have to ask administration, if you're moving in that way, what does administration need? Do you
Right.
need to come to us and say, we need to hire new people, we need this, I don't know what that looks like. If
Right.
we have
So-
staff that said, we're not gonna work or whatever, we're gonna retire, I don't know what that looks like, but we need to move.
Right, and I think that was the purpose of asking a board member to be on the committee, so they can hear that loud and clear.
Okay?
A lot of those questions were asked. We're waiting for some feedback from the teachers and the teachers' union that was represented on the committee. Or what are some things they're looking for in the model that will help their staff be more comfortable? We
Okay.
asked that question on Friday. We also sent a follow-up email, so I'm sure we'll get something back. What I'm laying the groundwork for tonight is I don't want to come back on October 13th because I think Gino will tell you, I made very clear to the group that we're putting together a plan and that we would like to have their hand in developing that plan. But either way, a plan's got to go forward to the board because that's what the board represents the community, and that's where this is going. And that was stated clearly. And so what I'm saying to the group tonight for the board is there needs to be some flexibility. Like I understand, like when you say you're frustrated about the 35 minutes instead of 40 minutes, if that's what it takes to get over the hump, then I think we got to put that in place. Like there has to be some compromise, there has to be some flexibility until we can get people back on campus and everybody's comfort level gets to a place, just like with remote learning. We're required the staff to be on campus for remote learning. We heard some hem and haws with that, but now they're in a good place. If you look at the positive things that were in that survey data from parents and students, they're doing a lot of good things. And so I'm thinking that, you know, the same will happen as we move on with 25% and we put a flexibility in that schedule so they have some additional planning time and students don't have the screen fatigue. And I'm hoping after a few weeks of 25% and the data being in the right direction, we can move to 50%.
And
But
I'm
I think
okay
the
with all of those as long as we move. But
I
if we come
understand
back
that.
in 2 weeks and we're still saying, well, we're going to do it, that's not okay.
Well, so we also have a planned meeting with the RBEA executive committee before the 13th meeting. We're working on a timing issue, whether it's 6 o'clock or 5:30, or that's really what we're working on now. But
Yeah, so
So,
Peter's
I think
calendar's
that-
open for coming early on the 13th.
Yeah, but more than an hour.
But can we
we should
expect
have
the
a plan.
25% in 2 weeks? I mean, other schools are starting to go October 1st.
Sure, I
Well,
understand that.
but Laura, we need time for a good plan, right? Like, we also don't want to just say, okay, we're starting tomorrow.
Well, that's not tomorrow, we're talking 2 weeks.
No, I know, but I mean,
Three weeks, what's today? The
we're
22nd.
also-
We're talking almost 4 weeks.
Some
I
things
know.
that have occurred, so you understand, we're working with our special ed department to get students on campus that needs, as you heard in that citizen comment tonight, there are some special ed students, there are some intervention programs that are going on campus. As the student board advisor mentioned, we're working with our counselors and social workers. We have had some classes have students show up for a class and then they spend the time in the designated area working with the rest of their classes online. So we are working through this. You have my word that I'm working on this plan. My own kids are in attendance at their school, so I believe in students being back on campus. I have to get the staff to a place where we can run school.
But that's 4 weeks away. If we don't say we want to have a goal, I mean, how many weeks do we need to get to 25%? That's 4 weeks.
That's the second quarter.
That's the first day of the second quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So we originally said we were going remote for the first quarter, so now
Right.
we're saying we're starting the second quarter in person. I think that's kind of keeping with the timetable we laid out for the community when we made that decision back in August.
So I think we need to kind of put a line in the sand and say, you know, unless something goes wrong with the science, there's an outbreak, starting second quarter, we expect to be, what is that minimum threshold? I mean, we keep pushing it and pushing it. And the community can hold us accountable, and we need to hold our administration accountable. Because
Understand?
we'll become the last school to go.
No, I understand that loud and clear. And I think Mr. Smithing said that when he originally opened that, he didn't want to speak for the board, but he said he expects to see some type of in-person learning taking place, kids on campus, first day of second quarter, and that is our target date.
Okay.
And I did want to add to all the listeners and to the board, we do have 3 meetings coming up. We have an executive meeting with the union tomorrow. We're meeting Thursday with the instructional coaches. And then Monday, we're having a faculty meeting. So we're committed to this plan. We're committed to, bringing students that we're just going to have, more meetings and more conversations coming up. But you can count on that, okay? We're working on it. We have meetings coming up so we can make sure we get all that feedback from the staff on what they need, to feel comfortable. But we're working on it.
And I would expect that the staff, if they're not going to come back, tell us sooner than later, so we have 4 weeks to fill your spot.
Well, that's a
To
good point.
teach
Like
the
when
children.
Gina made the comment about student attendance, I think staff attendance is equally as
Yeah.
yes.
I mean,
necessary.
If they're, what I don't want to see is we get here day one and we have some sick out. That's the worst
Yeah.
case scenario.
Right, that 56%
Right.
that said they're totally uncomfortable, if their
Right.
intent is to not be part of an in-person model,
Then
needs to come forward.
We need to move forward and
Let
find
us know.
somebody to do that job, and we will do that. At what
Yeah, and so-
cost is, we'll figure that out. But
Yeah, and so Board President, I don't know if we need to schedule another committee meeting with legal or start to look at options to be prepared.
I think you
but-
gotta just let this run its course. If I think I need Wes to schedule a meeting or
Okay.
to meet with the attorneys,
Yeah, we've
we're
had
not
those
there yet.
discussions.
We have a process we're working through with our attorney to send letters to people that have had some flexibility in their schedule right now, that they have to either take the formal leave process for second quarter. We'll work on all that communication. We'll put a timeline on there where they have to give us a notification. We have some things posted already, but we hear you loud and clear. And
Well,
we
and
heard
we-
you loud and clear back when you passed this at 7:00 back on August 11th, right? Some things changed. There were some developments. We're working, we understand the best place for kids to be is on campus.
So we know the administration has heard us, and we know, and thank you very much, the administration has been here all summer, bodily in the building. Thank you. The administration has worked towards this goal, and in support of our administration, we want the staff to hear that this is what the board is saying to the administration. It's not the administration pulling this out of the air. I believe, at least my bias, or, I don't know if we need to take a vote or something, but I think as a board, we are directing our administration to do something, and that we want the staff to hear that loud and clear.
But just two quick points of clarification. They're minor, but I think in this context they're very important. The faculty did not say, 56% did not say they were totally uncomfortable. They said they're uncomfortable. I'm just now, and we've also, when we have said before that we represent the community is the students, the parents, and the teachers. So I think it's incredibly important that as we go through this, and there's going to be some hard decisions, some tough discussions maybe, but I just think we have to remind all of ourselves, including all of us on the board, that we have to start with good faith, which we assume, it's a given, but all I'm saying is that you can feel it in the room. You can feel it through the statements of the parents and the students. There is anxiety, everybody's under stress, we are as well. And so all I'm saying, it's a plea for let the cool heads prevail. Let's listen to all the concerns, but I sense a slight raising of the emotional level, which is not helpful. And so I'm just being a stickler, but they did not say they are totally uncomfortable. They said, we are not comfortable.
I have a feeling they're gonna come back. And they're gonna, and because they love the children and they love what they do, it's a passion. And I think I'm very confident in that. If we stick to our timeline, and we work methodically through that timeline, and then we do what we say we're gonna do. So, well, any more discussion on this one? We'll move on. We'll let the crowd go.
Wes, if I could just
Fun
add,
stuff.
I was going to save this as part of my principal report, but now that we're on topic, I just share. So the question that has been repeated, so often tonight is, what can we do to come together? What can we do to raise the comfort level? And these have come from my informal conversations with the staff. So, guys, we're all in this together. Students, the community, parents, everybody here. Guys, please be mindful when you're out in the community of wearing your mask, practicing social distancing. Guys, be careful when we're crowded. Those are the things that just make people a little nervous, So if we could just, be mindful of all those guidelines, that the county and the state recommended, that should help, people feel more comfortable, right? I'm trying to attack that. How do we raise that comfort level, Having conversations. As I just said a minute ago, we're going to talk with the union executive. We're going to talk with the instructional coaches, and then we have the faculty meeting coming up. So, guys, give us a chance to continue engaging, our staff members. guys, working on procedures. I know we have a plan, and then you guys have had questions, but the teachers also have lots of questions that we have to answer, and we're committed to answering as an administration, you know. We're working on some tech needs as well, because having students in the classroom while you're teaching a class virtually, guys, I've done it in my talking with the principal, it is very difficult. I've had 20, 30 parents live. I've had 100 people online. Guys, it is tricky. It is doable with planning and effort, you know. But guys, right, it just takes time to build that stamina and that comfort level. So just working with that, you know, how could we do that? So, guys, those are just some of the minor things that I've engaged my staff in. What can we do to come together and raise the comfort level? But know this, the teachers believe in-person learning is the best. You know, many want to come back. I know that the data may contradict what I'm saying, you know, but we just got to give us a chance to iron out those conversations, iron out those procedures, okay? And I believe we can be and we will be back in person.
Thank you, Dr. Freitas.
Okay. Let's move on to
Student, mission statement, we don't have anything for tonight. That's been tabled.
initial discussion item. And
Do you want to give the room a minute to clear?
yeah, let's give a little break for everybody.
Thank you all for
I just want to
coming.
stick around for the fun stuff.